Hello, I'm Trey, and welcome to another one of my colouring tutorials. This time I'm going to be working on a design that I've printed onto card, and I try and find different mediums to print on, and this is slightly textured cream card. The design is actually a free one from Dover Publications. I've been getting free designs from them for a long time. Um, and I also scanned some books that I like that I've bought for my own use. Because I often make mistakes, so it's kind of nice to be able to try again. So this one is from Dover Publications. It was a free design, and the book is called Tea Time by Marty. Now I'm going to be using Prismacolor premium pencils this time, and I've never used Prismacolor on this kind of card, so I'm not quite sure how it's going to work, so that will be a learning experience. I've picked out some colours from the Prismacolor range of pencils, and there's loads of lovely colours in this set. I have one of the best samples of colours, I think, and I picked the colour range from a palette from Design Seeds, so it's worth looking at that again. I tried to pick quite a few colours because I knew there's quite a few elements in this design, and I'm going to work on the teapot and the cups and the plates, which I'm going to do all the same colour, the base of it. 3 colours in blue, a light, a medium and a dark. And now I'll try doing the teapot first. I'm going to cover all of the base in light blue. This card is quite textured, and I know some of my other colouring pencils work quite well with these, other brands. Marco Refine work really nice with this card. So I'm hoping that the Prismacolor work well as also. They're a lot softer, so it may well take quite a lot more layers to cover this card. However, with them being soft core, they should coat quite well. Now that's the first layer, the light blue for the teapot. And when I'm working with a cream card already, there is a colour that you're going over, so it will affect the actual colour the pencils turn out. So that's again is an interesting effect. I kind of like trying something different like this. Now I'm going to do the cups and the saucers in the same light blue colour. Now the first layer of light blue has gone down on the teapot, the cups and the saucers. The lighter blue is actually coming out darker now. That's because I'm working on cream card, and I'm now deciding where my light's coming from for my shading, and I'm going to choose a light source as if it was shining right in front of these teapot and cups. So all the shading is going to be mostly overlapping shading around the edges of things. So for instance, I will start on this teacup and, well, the teapot, sorry, and I'm going to be putting darker sections in between and around the flowers. Find this light source when I'm doing shading the easiest for me, and it works quite well when you have lots of elements included on a design such as this. quite strong colours, these Prisma. I have only used them a couple of times, so I'm still trying to get used to them. They're very soft. I consider myself having a light touch when it comes to pressure, but these pencils really do need a light touch, and I'm having to try and do it even lighter. So at the moment I'm creating an outline around the bigger elements of the flowers, not so much the stalks, but the petals and leaves. Right, so I think you've got the idea of doing outline. That will be the same for the cups as well, for all the flowers. Now I'm going to do some shading in the darker areas, just to give a little bit of depth. And around the edges of the element of the teapot, I'm trying to create a beveled effect, so it'll be darker at the edges. This is just a rough first layer, which I can darken in once I'm happy with where I want my highlights are in my darker sections. And there's a line here which I'm going to use for a bit of shading. Go. The edges of the main body of the teapot, I'll do the same. But not that part there, because that will be lighter. And then at the bottom, of course, there's going to be more darker sections, which will join up with the outlines, but you can emphasize those outlines again with a darker blue. Inside here, inside the teapot, I will do darker, and that gives a contrast to the top lip of the teapot. I'll do the edges, and underneath that line there to emphasize the difference between the top of the lid. I put darker line here because there's a overlap, as the lid will sit inside the teapot. Do a darker section around the inside. Where that line joins the main teapot, where the handle joins, and a little bit that section on the other side of there. But when it gets up here, I'm going to leave it lighter. To give it that nice, emphasize that nice curve, and darken it here, where it again it is attached to the teapot. I want to emphasize this curve here, so I'm going to come in darker blue just at the edge, but then extend it just underneath that line there and here, because that cup is overlapping the teapot. Do the same with the rest, with the cups. Just working out the curves. I mean, that's underneath, so I'm going to shade that in, meet up a little bit with this. I want that curve to be lighter. Side. I'm going to go around the edges inside. Highlights the edges of the inside of the cup. May give an impression there's something inside the cup if I do that. It's inside rim of the cup, so I'm going to do that darker. I'm just going to highlight the outer edges. To bring it in, give it that beveled effect like I did with the teapot. And the saucer will be the same. The inside of the saucer, this point is going to be darker, and around the rim, inside of the rim, to the edges here, and trying to create that beveled effect. Just a thin line underneath there and at the bottom. This is the same here. And then you've got the cup that's in the front. And you just do exactly the same again. Underneath bit there is darker, connecting to the cup. Here is darker. Inside of the cup. So that rim. So I'm going to just do the edges again to try to darken that in, give it a beveled effect. The outline of the flowers I'll do off camera. You've got an idea of what that looks like on the teapot. Don't have to watch all of that. Around the inside edge of the saucer, because this is the top lip, so that will stay lighter. A bit of shadow inside where the cup meets the edge of the saucer, and the other edge of the saucer on this side. I'll have to turn it around to make it easier to colour. And the edges again underneath section. Underneath the lip of the saucer. It's just using the lines that are already there really to guide you. On that edge and a little bit at the bottom, and there's a spoon here, so I'm going to put a little bit of shading underneath there. Right, I'm going to, off camera, I'm going to do the, I mean there's a little bit of shading behind there underneath that spoon as well. I'm going to do the, around all the flowers off camera, so you don't need to watch that, and then come back to this. Now I've done most of the outlines around the flowers and on the teapot and the cups. Some of the outlines will join in obviously with the other side shading, but that's okay. Now I'm going to just do a little bit of the darker blue. It's the darkest blue I'm using. Now I'm going to go into the darker areas with this blue. And around the edges, where I put the medium blue. You won't be covering all of the medium blue, just the very edges. This needs a little bit of edging. I forgot to do that. These Prisma colours go down, way down quicker than other pencils I use. So despite the fact I have a light touch, that still happens. Probably because they're very soft. Right, so with the flowers and the foliage on the teapot and the cups, I'll just go around the edges. Just lightly, like a fine line with this dark blue. I'll be doing the same with all the flowers as well, so again I'll do that off camera. I'm just going to do the edges of the teapot lid and the teapot body. Just very light, a fine line. Side there around the edge, it would be darker. But anywhere where I want to emphasize an edge, I'll be using the darkest blue. Do the same with the cup, around the edges on the inside. And on the inside of those, that lid. There where you want the curve to look deeper. This was the kind of shading I learned first when I was doing Zentangle drawing and colouring in, because most of Zentangle are like either square edges or round edges, and doing this kind of colouring emphasised in those shapes and give it almost a 3D effect. I brought that into the colouring of other designs. Found it worked quite well. Right, I'm going to finish this off camera. I'm going to do all the outlines of the flowers, and then I'm going to repeat all those layers about 3 times I think, just to see how these pencils work with this cream texture card. Might need more layers, but I'll be able to tell at that point. Okay, I'll come back to this after I've done that. I put 4 layers of the various blues onto the cups, the saucers and the teapot, and then I tried to blend it with my blender pencil, and I struggled a wee bit, and I think it's because of the texture of the card. So I decided for the larger sections to try use baby oil. I haven't used baby oil very often, and I've only started using it recently. For me, it only works for wax pencils, and I've never used it on this card, so I will show you how I use baby oil. I have used it on the teapot and this cup and saucer, and it's worked reasonably well, so you can tell the difference between that cup and that cup that hasn't, this cup hasn't been done. So with the baby oil, I'm always kind of concerned about how much I'm using, so I put a tiny wee bit into a egg cup and just dab in a cotton bud, and then I take off more of the cotton bud to try and, so it's only kind of a trace really of baby oil on it. And I only use this for large areas because it's not very precise, so I find it doesn't work with small detailed areas. And then I just gently, if I think there's too much on, I'll take some more off. And this is pretty much trial and error with this. I tried using cotton bud on its own and it doesn't work for me. I don't find it works much at all. It just smooths it out a little bit. And I have used my blender pencil with these pencils and they've been fine, so it's probably the paper I've printed onto that's, you know, causing a little bit of a problem there for blending. Just do this lightly as well, I'm not pressing on hard. It just smooths it out a little bit. And with the cup, because it's lots of like narrow small areas, I just do the sides, smooth out the larger areas. And a little bit there. And it just smooths it out a little bit there. Also, I find that once I've used the baby oil, I can't always add more pencil on top, so I tend to, if I'm going to do that, I'll do that at the end. So that's how I use baby oil. And the bottle I've got is going to take me forever to use because it's a big one. I'm happy enough now with that for the cups and the saucers. So now I'm going to do the flowers, and I decided on red and pinky purple for the flowers. I'm going to do the bigger flowers in the red shades with a pink for the highlights. And I'll do them the same same flowers and all the cups and the teapot the same. Going to put the highlights down first. And do those smaller flowers in the other colour. Same flowers again on here, in this cup. When we're doing light layers, I can go back and darken as I wish, as I go along. The light pressure is really important at the start. I find with these pencils, because they're quite soft core, I can sometimes smear other parts if I lean on them, so I try to use a spare piece of card to protect the project as I'm colouring. And that's probably because the pigmentation and how soft the lead is. Right, I'm going to, that pink I used was the lightest pencil for these bigger flowers, but they're mostly going to be red, so I'll be using a medium red now. This light. Quite tense. I'm getting used to these pencils because they're quite vibrant. And if I lean on too hard, they put a lot more pigment down than I actually want. I need to darken in the lighter sections. With this being cream card, and I found the same when I was doing the blue, the palest blue, you couldn't always see the colour very well. So probably needed to put more of a pressure on that lightest colour. So I'll do this one again to make sure I know where my lighter is. It's going to get lost really. And that flower's difficult to work out. Now this cup here. These red pencils in the Prisma colour set I find to be quite vibrant, and more variation in proper red. My other pencils tend to be more orange than red. I do like the reds in this Prisma colour set. Right, and there was a flower on here. I wasn't sure what colour I was going to do it, but I'm going to do it the red colours now, so I'll just finish that one off, the second layer. And I have a darker red, the darkest red. I find these quite nice. These Prismacolor, they have names on as well, which is kind of cool. Crimson red for the darkest. None of my other pencils have names on the pencils. I'm doing records of what pencils I use. I always use the numbers, but it is kind of cool to have names on them as well. With the flowers, I'm just working from the middle, the darkest, until the ends have been the lightest. I'm doing the same for all the flowers. Makes it easier. Right, that's the first layer for all of the reds and the pink for those flowers. And I will be doing some more layers and then come back to these. Probably need to extend the medium red and overlap it more into the lighter pink areas. I put 4 layers of each colour of the rose type flowers and all the flowers I did in red and the pinks. And I managed to do a little bit of a blend, and it works reasonably well this time. I had to put a little bit of pressure on to do it, but I've managed to okay, so I'm just going to finish off the blending on these 2 flowers, and that's all the flowers done. One of the things that some people have mentioned, colorists, when they've printed out designs like I have here, that the line art that you've printed can run and bleed into the ink, the pencils, when you blend. Now that will probably be partly because of the printing process, because you're doing it with a printer and the kind of paper you're using, but also be the amount of ink that's on the paper. And I found that if I print off on a draft setting with the printer, it doesn't bleed into the design and into the ink, the pencil areas when you do your blending. It didn't bleed at all when I did the baby oil, and it's not bleeding when I'm using my blender pencil. So that was a really good tip really to pass on, because it can be quite frustrating when you've coloured in, come to blend, and you're using a printed design you printed yourself, and it runs. So yeah, just use a draft setting on your printer to print your design, and the ink, because there's less ink on the paper, it tends to avoid that bleed. I mean, I don't mind. I mean, the design itself is lighter, to look at, but I don't mind that if the line art isn't as dark. Right, and there's the red flowers, and they've worked out quite well. I really do like those red pencils with the Prisma colour set. Very vibrant. And the rest of the flowers I'm going to do in pinky purple colours. And I'm also going to do the centres of these flowers in the pink. And the stalks inside the other flowers. Right, a light pink. To start off with for the other flowers, and I'm just going to work out where I want the lightest section for each kind of flower. This one I think I'll put in closest to the middle. Do them slightly differently from the red flowers. And this one I'll do it at the end. I like to mix up how I do flowers, makes it more interesting. And I'm going to use a darker red, well, darker pink, purpley coloured for the ends. I wasn't 100% sure what I was going to do with those sections, but I think I'm probably just going to use just two colours for the petals on these pinky purple flowers. So I'll adjust the lighter pink. I quite often change my mind on how I'm going to do something when I come to colour. Trying to just do a very light pressure with that purple. Quite a vibrant colour. I'm just putting this darkest purple down very, very gently, because I'll be able to blend it in later on with the lighter pink I'm using, and it'll soften up that. If I did it too dark, it would end up being more dark purple and not as much pink. So I'm just having to sort of like glance across the paper really with this darkest purple. So it may look a little bit scruffy, but it will fit, you know, fill in with the lighter purple later on when I do my blending, more layers. And the medium pink that I use for the middle of the red flowers, I'm going to put in the middle of these. Now I'll do the extra layer now, because that's one layer for each colour for the pink flowers. What I thought I would do, I would show you a little bit of how that works that I would normally do off camera. If I'm doing more layers, I tend to start to extend things a little bit. Now that dark purple is a big contrast between this light pink. Now originally I was going to gradiate it with the medium pink, but I decided to change my mind. I thought I would be able to soften up that dark purple. I'll also go over that medium pink. And I'll go over that edging again. And I'll do this with all the other flowers. So I'm creating a gradient, even though I'm only using two colours, by going over all of the flower, including the darker sections with the lightest pink. But I darken the edges only. And the gradient is created by the darker purple being under the lighter pink. I'm going to use my blender pencil on that. I do a light blend. He softens it again, just light, because I want to go over those layers again. I'll do another couple more layers on that, but that's just to give you an idea of how I'll be doing all the other flowers off camera to get to that darker look and more gradient effect. I've completed all of the flowers now, the purpley pink flowers that I started, and completed them in the same way I did prior. I showed prior, I blended over with the lightest pink just because of the contrast between the colours. It works quite well, and I'm happy with those. I do like the vibrancy of these Prisma colour pencils, they're very nice. The last thing that's left for the cups and the teapot are the leaves. I've chosen 3 sagey shades of green, and I'm going to use the lightest green to put over the leaves. I'm going to do the lightest green all over for these ones, and then come over later on with some shading. Now some of these leaves are quite small, so I won't get a lot of shading in them. So the smaller ones I'm just going to add darker shading of green from the ends. Now, these here, they're actually more flower buds, so I'll make those pink later on. And these smallest parts of the flower, I'm just going to do all in dark colours. So the smallest leaves, it's just a little bit of shading, it won't be much. The bigger leaves, I'm going to add the darkest shading from the middle. Just to emphasise the lines a little bit, because there's a little bit more scope for shading on those. As always, this is a rough first layer, something I can change later as I go along and adapt, just to give me an idea where I feel light and dark is. Yeah, I think you get an idea. I'm just doing a little bit of shading with the small ones, just a tiny wee bit, and the slimmer ones just from the edge. And the bigger ones I'm following the lines. So I don't need to do all of those, I can do those off camera. And then I'm going to take my darkest green and overlap the darker areas. So the smaller, slimmer leaves is just the edge. I'll do all the stalks as well in this darker green. And the larger leaves is just going over the lines. They're already in the drawing. I'm not quite sure if I'll extend the medium green. I'll look at that when I'm doing my next layer. That's personal choice really, where you want your shading to be. So I'll just finish off one leaf, and just so I'll give you an idea what I'm going to do with the rest of them. This one with lines in the larger leaves, I'm just going to extend the medium green from the middle, and what it'll leave is a lighter green around the edges. With the smaller leaves, I'm just going to do the shading from the edge and leave the lighter green at the end. And all the stalks I'll do in the dark green. I'll finish the rest of those off camera. I put a few more layers of the greens on the leaves, 2 layers of each colour, and that was a light, medium and dark green, and sage shades, and I found they work really well with this nice cream card. I haven't finished all the leaves off yet. I decided to blend with my lightest colour because these pencils blend really well, and rather than use a blender pencil. So to finish, I'll just finish off these last leaves so you can see how that works. I'm going from the darkest to the lightest because I'm pushing some of that darker colour in towards the light, and it just softens it up and makes it all a little bit darker on the ends. These pencils I also found difficult to use on the tiny leaves. I find because they're soft core, I can't keep the sharp point for very long. So they're a bit like the Renoirs. I find it difficult to do small areas with these pencils. So they're probably a pencil that I would combine with a harder core pencil if I have small detail in the future. Now again, I'm just going to, this is slightly harder pressure than normal. I'll just blend over all of that, and it works quite nicely. It just pushes all the pigment around towards the edges. It's giving the leaves a less harsh look, at less, softer lines, and I like the effect. So that is the teapot, the teacups and saucers finished, and it's also the end of part 1 of this tutorial. When I come back to part 2, I'll decide which elements I'm going to do next, possibly the background. I'll see how that works. So I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial and found it useful, and I'll see you again soon.